Christmas tree worksheets. Okay, we've done this before Christmas break. It says by successfully writing equations to define each red line, you are now to solve for where those lines might meet on your coordinate grid. So, if I use Shelby's map here, she has her red lines, which are her slopes, right? That you guys drew in like task 3, correct?
It's upside down.
Correct. Okay. So now she's gonna find 3 places where red lines intersect each other. So looking at her coordinate grid, she has a red line here and a red line here. They intersect right there. Okay, we don't know that exact point, but that's why we're gonna solve that exact point. So looking at her map, Shelby, one of the places would be from the security desk to slide number 2. Okay, so she would look back at task 7. And she would find what was the equation that you wrote from your security desk to your slide 2. So she'd find that. She's not going to tell me yet, but she'd find that, okay? And she'd write one of those equations. So on your tasks, I believe it looks like you have blank and blank, okay? So let's say, for example, sorry, go ahead and say yours. Let's say, for example, her security desk to her slide 2 was y equals negative 2x plus 14. And then the other line was from her slide 3 to restroom. And looking at task 7 for that, her equation was y equals 3x minus 7. Okay? So she got those 2 equations from her task 7. Questions about that? So you identify them on your map first, then you're going to have to go back and look at what your equations were. Questions about that so far? Some of you already look like you're spacing out on me. Questions about that so far? Okay. So now, if I'm going to find out where they intersect, it's where they equal each other, right? So I'm going to set negative 2x plus 14 equal to what? 3x minus 7. And then I'm going to solve for what letter? X. So what would I do to solve? Okay, so I add 2x, add 2x, 5x, and
Then use minus 7 plus 14 and use subtract or add 7 there. Yeah, I know. Then you get 21. And then you go 5x and then you get 5.
and what would you get?
You get 4.
4.2.
You get 4.2. Okay, you are going to round to the nearest tenth. So you're rounding to the what? Okay, so I found the x value, but since I'm on a coordinate grid, it also has a y value. So now that I know what x is, how am I going to figure out y? Where do you see a y on this paper? So I could pick either one of them. I could place my value of x here and then solve for y, or I could put it here and solve for y. Either way, you will get the exact same answer. Okay? So if I use this equation, I would have y equals 3 times what? 4.2, because that's what I solved for x. And then minus 7. So how would I solve?
3 times 4.2.
Which is
12.6.
12.6 minus 7. So then I minus 7, and what do you get? They're on the same side, so I just subtract. So I would get y equals 5.6. Okay. So now my final answer, I believe I wrote this. It's this blank, comma, this blank. So what goes here? 4.2, because that's my x value, comma, what's my y value? So if you need to go back under these and write x, comma, y, that way you don't forget which one goes where, Please do that. So then that is the one problem. That's my answer. Okay. Now, does this take a little more work than maybe some of the others?
Yes.
Yes. But if you look at this side, how many times do you have to do that?
3.
3 times. So you only have to do this process 3 times. Now, once you get this point, you are to go back onto your map, and you just put a little dot where those 2 lines, so I have a red line here, I have a red line here, I go on my map and I put a yellow dot where those 2 lines intersect. Okay? Questions? Okay. How do you pick the lines? Emma, do you find any 2 that intersect on your map? Then after I figure out, like if I find 2 that intersect, where do I go to figure out their equation? Task 7. Okay, so then I find those 2 equations and write them in and then solve. Questions? Now, you might get some ugly fractions because some of you have like slopes like negative 13 over 16. Okay? Just type it in your calculator that way, and then at the very end, change it to a decimal. Okay? Use your calculator for this. Yeah.
I need to check task.
Okay. If you need to get your other tasks checked first, please do so. Okay, now one question for you guys before you move on. What if I have something like, I had x, oops, that's not a good color. If I have something like x equals negative 2, because that was my equation, and then y equals 5x minus 7/9, what would I do? Because I don't have like a y that I can replace, do I, Emma? So do you already have x?
Yeah.
We already know. What does x equal?
Negative 2.
Okay, so in my answer, I can just go, oh, well, I know x has to be negative 2, so I'm going to write negative 2. Now to figure out y, I put it in here, and then solve for y to put there. Okay, so what happens if I have something like y equals 5? I already know the y, so I would still replace my y to solve for x this time there. So then you would have to get x by itself that way. Okay? So if you already have one of them, it's actually a little bit easier because you don't have to solve for one of them. You already have one. Questions about that? Okay. You may work.